So it's a small, brief introduction to the term modernism. School that started somewhere in around 1880 and seemed to have gone till 1940s. However, a modern scholar, Habermas, he says the project of modernity is not yet over, signifying that modernity is not yet over. So there are good number of scholars who believe that modernism started in the year 1880s and ended in 1940s. But there are also others who believe that modernism still continues to the present day. Now, when was the word modernism used for the first time? The word modernism for the first time was used in this book titled A Survey of Modernist Poetry, written by Laura Riding and Robert Greaves. Modernism, unlike all the other isms that came in the history, is an all-inclusive movement. What do I mean by saying an all-inclusive movement? Is something that I would like to elaborate in the next few slides. It's a movement that we could see in painting, in arts generally, in music, and to be very precise, in literature. So there are two sets of painting that you see on the screen now. One is called a supramatic painting, and the other one is a regular one. Now, in the supramatic painting, you see only use of boxes and cubes, which was also called cubism, where it does not make any sense to the naked eye, but you have to be thorough to understand the meaning that the artist is trying to give. Coming back to the other painting, on the left hand side you have a drip painting where absolutely you don't seem to get any meaning, whereas on the right you have a traditional painting with perfect finish. Coming back to poetry, the typical poetry that we have been used to writing is where you have 4 lines stanza, and the whole poem consisted of 4 stanzas. Basically, that would go back to the Elizabethan times where William Shakespeare and others popularized sonnets. But coming back to modernism, there was this form which was given away and the new form was adopted. So the poem that you see on the screen, written by E. Cummings, consists only of 1 line, but probably divided into few letters. So a leaf falls on loneliness, that's the poem, and this is how it seems to have written. So that's to do with the poetry. Likewise, modernism intruded into all the other aspects, including hairstyle that you see on your screen. Way back in 1920s, 30s, order, organization, systematic arrangement was valued highly. In contrast to the modern times, where disorderliness is valued highly. Likewise, you also see in terms of fashion, the basically the adoption of fashion is seen in the older form of movies and also generally in the life of people. But the contemporary times and the modern times, you see the different kind of fashion coming in, basically influenced by the modernist ideas. Notions of masculinity have changed to a great extent, where good physique, fit physique is highly valued, whereas probably the healthy physique is not as good as the fit and good looking physique. Also, modernism intruded into the area of food, where traditional food is no more valued, whereas fast food is gaining a lot of significance as marked by modernism. That's basically introduction to modernism. Now, what were basically the features, or from what was the earlier times and to what it moved into? It's a movement from order to disorder. So there was a lot of order pre 1980s, 1880s, and moving on to disorder from 1880s to 1940s. Uh, from rules to freedom, rules in terms of writing, in terms of living daily life, in terms of composing music, in terms of putting up steps, forming notes, all that. But today you do not have rules to write poetry, do not have uh, rules to write novels, no rules to write plays, to compose music, and such other things. Any art form, there is absolute freedom to practice your art form the way you wish to do, from certainty to chaos, absolute chaotic. The art is absolutely chaotic. From structure to randomized, especially I gave the example of a poem which was highly structured from the sense that four lines and those lines were precisely rhyming. The first line had to rhyme with the third and the second had to rhyme basically with the fourth, but that does not happen anymore. You could have the whole poem being randomly written with absolutely no structure in place, with the first stanza of three lines, the second being of six, and the fourth being of three and two, or whatever lines that we wish to. And from monotony to newness is basically modernism originated from this one fact that it was said the scholars were tired with the old and therefore they had to look for something new. What are the features of modernism? The rules and regulations. On the surface, it looks like modernism does not have any rules and regulations, but it has its own internal rules and regulations. It has to have, otherwise the art does not continue to exist. It has its own structure as well. It needs to have a structure of its own, even if it is something that we may seem to have no structure, but it will need to have a structure. But it is associated with a radical change. It believes that no form can be permanent, and therefore you've got to have change coming through all the time. And the basic idea is to break the monotony, because that would bring in the newness that modernists and the modernism as a school was always looking for. It looks like it is half-assed and incomplete. I mean, you do not look for a completeness, you do not look for picture finish. It could just get over abruptly. Meaningless is the that's how the modern art appears, as though there is no meaning. But if you dive deep into the art form, basically we are able to find some sort of a meaning. And I already said there's always internal structure to all the modern art forms, because no art can continue to exist without having a structure. So that's all from today. Thank you.